Dan asked the question, what's your process for coming up with repeatable melodies on the fly? Also, what about for some quick pickup chord changes? What elements do you try to include? What harmonic elements do you aim for to create an interesting progression? Could you maybe talk major resolution versus a minor resolution? Okay, there's a lot of questions in there. So why don't we start?
So let's go one by one, I guess.
Go with whatever you... I mean, the first question was, what's your process for coming up with repeatable melodies on the fly?
I'm assuming this is like a
cipher style.
This is in the context of like Le Cipher or urban science or
any
right?
kind of thing like that.
Yeah. That's a good question. How do I come up with memorable stuff? Honestly, if I'm going to be totally honest, I don't know. It's I think, first you got to pick a key, then you got to pick a couple chords, and then memorable melodies. Here's the thing. So I'm teaching right now. I did this thing called Atelier Speech, which is kind of like a workshop for high school kids. It's a program that runs, in high schools and helps them to get hooked on school and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And we do that through beat making and helping them create their own songs. And, at the end of the year, we get to record it and they do a big show.
Nice. I didn't know anything about this.
Now
cool.
You know.
Yeah.
That's kind of a side job I started.
Yeah.
Really fun. The kids are sweet. A lot of them are hilarious. Some of their lyrics are fire and hilarious at the same time.
Nice.
But one of the things that we try to do when we're, just because a lot of the beats that we're making, I'm not the one who's making them. We try to get the students to make the beats, right?
Nice.
We want them to give their input so that, at the end of it, they're proud of it and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And one thing that we like to do is to give limitations, right?
Okay.
So, for example, having a song, 3 chords, and say, okay, so your melody line or whatever riff you want to do, you can only use 3 notes. So choose 3 notes, and that's your melody, right? Now I might be, going on. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I feel like just that approach sometimes is really, really, really good.
When I was
because a lot of times. Yeah,
I was just saying, when I was speaking with Freddie last week, one of the things we talked about, or that I kind of we riffed on a bit, was the idea of like total freedom not being a good thing necessarily, and like having limitations on it, and I feel like that's what you're touching on as well. But sorry, keep going where you were.
Yeah, because sometimes, I think that's exactly it. Because if you look at a piano, right, technically you have 12 notes you can kind of play through, right? Wow, my piano sounds cheesy right now. It's part of a mix of something.
Oh yeah, whatever.
It's very thin, man. But
we know
in the whole mix, it works.
Fucking go back to drums, man. Go back.
Go stop it. 12 notes. 12 notes times however many octaves you have. That's a lot of possibilities. But sometimes just kind of limiting yourself to 3 notes, for example, and telling yourself, my melody is gonna have 3 notes. You can't go wrong with 3 notes. There you go. Yeah. I have a pop song now. I just add a couple drums and a heavy 808 bass, and you got a hit song.
Yeah.
And that was very simple. That's just 3 notes.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, just kind of setting yourself setting these limitations is really helpful, I find.
Yeah, and I think the important thing of what you just did there was rhythm, right? The rhythm was what made those 3 notes interesting. I mean, Dan's question is one of those that's a bit difficult in the sense of like, it's kind of like that question of like, where do you get your ideas from? Which is like the worst question in the universe, right? It's just a terrible, I guess.
But I mean, there's no such thing really as a dumb question.
I didn't say it was a dumb question. I don't like that question of where do you get your ideas from? It's like,
well,
I don't know.
You don't get to
the
decide
history of humanity is where I get my ideas from.
But I mean, if it's it's really not as deep as that for me. Yeah.
But what I was going to say about the rhythm thing is that for me, like often, like obviously there's initiating, so there's coming up with something out of nowhere, and that's where do you get your ideas from. But it's rhythmically making it have some relationship with what's already going on. So what I mean is like if the drummer is accenting on the snare, like certain rhythms, maybe the first snare hit is the beginning of my melody or a high point of the melody or whatever, because if the melody is in a totally different, has different accents as the actual drum pattern, well, then it doesn't make any sense, So for me, it's like kind of relating it rhythmically to what else is going on in the track.
For sure.
So let's move on to this next question. So I'm not totally certain what he means by this, by the way, but he says, so also, what about for some quick pickup chord changes, what elements do you try to include? And then there's also what harmonic elements do you aim for to create an interesting progression? I'm not sure what the first question means. Dan, if you're still on, please expand.
But okay, I mean, I could try to. So just repeat what he said.
So
again.
The first part was, it says also, what about for some quick pickup chord changes? What elements do you try to include?
Good question. Honestly, if I hear chord progression I like when I'm walking down the street and I'm like, oh, this is cool, I'll write it down on my phone.
Right.
Put it on like a notepad or whatever, and then let's say I'm at a Cypher Jam and we got to pick a song. I'll just go through my phone. Oh, this chord works. Mm-hmm. What chord progressions what's my go-to? I don't know. I mean, I feel like the whole 5/1 thing works a lot, so I usually just kind of work with that. Mm-hmm. But as a piano player, obviously, you kind of learn how to dress them up differently so that, you have, you think a lot, especially as a piano player, you think a lot about when you play a chord, you're not just playing a chord. Your chord has a top note, which is a melody. Right? Yeah. So that's kind of one thing that I'm thinking of, right?
Absolutely. I guess.
So like playing, yeah.
I was just going to say, I guess,
I don't know.
Go for it.
If I'm playing, let's say, G alternate to C minor, right? If I just play that's pretty simple. But if I think of what my top note is at the same time I can create some sort of melody with that,
Yeah.
So it's all those little things. Like, I think a lot of times, especially as when I talk with a lot of musicians here and there and whatnot, a lot of things that come up with is we're always trying to find these cool chords and we're always thinking about chords, but melodies is really where it's at.
Absolutely. I agree 100 million %. Yeah. I mean, if we think about, many of the, sort of, I mean, obviously there are some great jams that we've had where there's some very unconventional chord progressions or whatever, but sometimes it's just C minor to F minor or whatever the heck it is. But what ties it together is a good melody. And I used to say this when I was running the community workshops. I'm like, do you have something like whatever we just did, like whatever jam we just did? Do you remember what it sounded like? It's like, oh yeah, it went like da ba da 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 or something like that. It's like you remember the melody, you don't remember, what chords were underneath it. And it's. I mean, you may also remember that, but like or the bass line was this particular thing because those are all melodies, whether they're on the bottom or on the top or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, there's a reason why when you listen to the radio and you listen to pop songs, there's a reason why there's so many chords that have the same progression. Like you can name a million songs that have the 1 5 6 4 progression, and what difference them most of the time is going to be melody and rhythm. Right.
I agree completely. So the next question that he asked was, what harmonic elements do you aim for to create an interesting progression? I feel like that's a separate question, or do you feel like you already answered that?
What kind of
what harmonic elements? What harmonic elements do you aim for to create an interesting progression?
I don't know if I can answer that really, to be honest, because a lot of it is just based on what I hear and what I listen to, and let's say if there's a artist that I really like, maybe I'll incorporate a lot of their playing into mine, for example.
Yeah,
like if
I mean, my feeling on this is like, I think a lot of people get hung up on music theory and feel like, oh, I got to learn all this stuff in order to come up with these things. Well, no, I mean, I think it's good to learn music theory and it's good to learn all these.
It's great, yeah.
Of course, but it's not going to then like, oh, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to use this music theory for coming up with my song. Like, that's not how it works. I mean, you can write like exercises to learn a technique and whatever, but at the end of the day, there's a friend of mine that said this. They said that, let me get this correct. They said music theory is about training your instincts. And I love that expression because that's it. You just, you just said, for example, G alt to C minor. Maybe you don't know what the altered chord sounds like. And so
Mhm.
as you start learning that and learn the altered scale and maybe learn about diminished scale and whole tone and other stuff that kind of make up that scale, and as you get into that, you start to get that sound in your head, and then it just comes out because you hear it. So I think it's less about consciously, well, I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, I mean this is really directed to you anyway, less about consciously thinking about the harmonic elements and just having the training that like gets those sounds in your ear.
I feel like that's definitely the case for me. Like I definitely draw on exactly my whatever I've picked up over the years and my experiences and what I listen to, and I kind of all channel that into whatever I play. Because yeah, I definitely don't consider myself a composer or yeah, I do write music every once in a while, but I'm definitely not the greatest or anywhere near.
Oh, come on, man, you're the greatest. You're the greatest.
Oh, get out of here. It's definitely not my forte, but I can say that when I do play and when the ideas that I do get are just based out of experiences and based out of things I listen to and think, if I like a certain player, I might end up incorporating some of his things in my music as well. So it's really just, I guess a lot of it comes down to just listening and analyzing what you hear.
Yeah, I think.
Well,
maybe that's a good way to think of it. Like, you like something, well, analyze it, figure out what it actually is, and as you do that more and more, you get more tools.
Exactly, and I mean, the word analyze doesn't have to be this big thing where you sit down, you have your pen and paper, and you're writing down every single thing. It could be as simple as, well, I like how in so and so's way of playing, how their chord progressions, for example, they have a certain way of introducing certain chords or bringing chords together, for example. That It could be as simple as that, rather than, well, I know he plays these notes, right, and whatever, Well,
actually, on
For me,
that,
anyways, that's how I feel it a lot.
On that note, and kind of tying into Dan's last question. So Dan's last question was, could maybe talk major resolution versus a minor resolution. And what I was going to say is that from what you just told me, it reminds me a little bit about, so Robert Glasper is one of your influences. And I feel like he uses a lot of the same kind of techniques, like in the sense of, well, I don't know if he thinks about it this way, but I see a lot of his progressions as coming as like mixed mode or whatever, what do you want to call it? Like, it starts in major and then it uses some minor harmony and then goes back to major, and like that's how I see it. So do you want to talk about Glasper a little bit and how he influenced your playing and all this stuff, and maybe integrate the major versus minor resolution? I don't know if you agree with my synopsis of like the way his ideas are built, but
I can try, but again, like I'm not a big technical head. I gotta be honest, like I'm not, when I think of music, I don't try to think in terms of okay, this chord going to this chord, resolving to this and whatnot. It's a lot of it is and maybe this might sound cheesy or whatever, but a lot of it is just feel, right, and whatever feels good, if I like how this chord sounds, that's what I'm going to play. Now to go back to the Glasper thing. So Glasper, what can I say about Glasper? I mean, yeah, I can definitely say, especially when it comes to playing, more hip hop or R&B and soul. I definitely have gotten a lot of influences by him, and he does definitely do this whole major minor. Let's see if I can hook this up. Yeah. And a lot of these rolled chords, but then again, you see like how he always adds his little rolls. That he always does.
It's almost,
there's a lot of that too.
It's
which
also
I feel like
it's many in what I think what you're getting at is it's not just about the chords, it's the way he's playing it. Like it's the grace notes, it's the rolled chords, it's all that. Yeah.
It's all of that because I can play that same progression.
Yeah. Sounds lame as hell.
Boring, but you add your little flair to it. And whatnot.
Not to mention there's a melody. There's a melody in there, right? When you do
exactly. And it's just figuring out like what melodies work for you and within the chords. That's definitely what I've been working on a lot actually these days. Straight up, like in terms of figuring out chords and whatnot, is how to make those chords sound interesting. Well, you got to figure out how to get melodies into those chords.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of my answers are getting back to the whole. Well, it's not about the chords, it's not about the notes, but it's about figuring out melodies and rhythms, and I feel like that's definitely the key.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. You asked me before this interview, like, what should I talk about? I don't know what I should talk about. I'm like, whatever, it's going to come out naturally. Like, what do you think are like for you? You're realizing as you're talking about this, like, oh, melodies is the thing. That's where it's
Oh,
at.
definitely.
And I agree completely. Like people, I mean. Obviously, yes, it is important to get your theory together. It is important to get your technique together.
I feel like, yeah.
But it's not.
I feel like, I've definitely been blessed with, having the chance to, I did the whole schooling in music and whatnot, and I got a bit of theory and whatnot, and that's definitely helped as well. But I feel like there's always a balance between, what's theoretically what makes sense, and then what do you actually feel? What do you actually want to play? What makes sense for you to play as an artist or as a musician?
Absolutely.